Good morning. My name is Pastor Ruth, and on behalf of Reverend Teresa Inez Soto, worship producer Vincent Rains, worship associates Sherry Western and Jeffrey Melcher, my colleagues on the Unitarian Universalists United for Racial Justice, which is the anti-racism transformation team in Colorado, and others on the worship team, welcome. Welcome to worship here with the First Unitarian Church of Oakland. Please turn your cameras off while we begin our service and light our chalice and candles. This will allow us to begin with a quiet space. We will turn our cameras on to greet each other later in the service. Please note that we are recording this service. So if you don't want to be in the recording, you can keep your camera turned off. For the best viewing experience, we recommend that you make certain you have the up-to-date version of the Zoom app on your computer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudia Morgan, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees, and we're glad you're here. We are an intentionally multi-generational, multiracial, multicultural, inclusive, and anti-oppressive religious community. You are welcome here. We invite you to fill out the guest connection card you see in the chat, which should be over here somewhere. We want to be able to support your exploration of what's available in our community that interests you and how you might participate. Welcome. Now, before we begin our worship service, we have a few reminders. Today, immediately after service, in place of coffee hour, we're having a virtual connection fair, Stories of Us, Stories of Service. This is an opportunity to mix with other congregants and connect with leaders of the First Unitarian Church of Oakland as they tell their stories about their passion for and experience in serving our mission here. There's also a Board of Trustee meeting this Tuesday, starting at 6:45 p.m. As usual, there's a 15-minute period before the meeting when we invite you to unmute, come to the meeting, unmute, and ask us questions and give us suggestions. On May 26th, from 8 to 9 p.m., families and caregivers are invited to meet together with the Interim Director of Religious Education, Alex Hayters-Winnett, to discuss our hopes, concerns, risks, opportunities, as well as our emotional and spiritual needs for reopening religious education programs as part of the community at First Unitarian Church of Oakland. Please contact Alex for Zoom information. Finally, join the Memorial Day Weekend Eco Challenge, a family-friendly, all-ages supermarket treasure hunt for the climate. Learn to hunt for climate-friendly refrigerants in our supermarket. Using the app, we'll connect our findings with a map of supermarkets around the world. Look in Zoom chat or Chalice Chatter to sign up and join us. Contact Heather with any questions. And for more details on all of these things and more, you can visit the online calendar at uuoakland.org/calendar. And for Zoom details, email yesplease, that's one word, yesplease @uuoakland.org. Thank you.
We light this chalice today, symbol of Unitarian Universalism, in part as celebration of COVID-19 vaccines that bring us closer to being together in person. And we commit to the health and safety for everyone, leaving no one behind. Now I'd like to introduce Sherry Weston. Let me see here. Here we go. We're going to wait for that chalice and the candles. I'd like to introduce Sherry Weston, worship associate. Sherry is a dear friend we met in 2014 at a race conference at the Iliff School of Theology, where I was a seminarian. She is a dear friend and colleague in the work of dismantling white supremacy culture and moving into that more beautiful multicultural world we all know is possible. It is a treasure to work with Sherry in worship this morning.
Thanks so much. That was very sweet. We also light a candle to lift up the lives of Black and Brown people. We light this candle in recognition of the Black Lives Matter movement and in recognition of the systemic racism that tries to deny the full humanity of Black people and commit to dismantling it with daily action. Also, we light a third candle to invoke peace for all of our neighbors and remember lives lost to violence. If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. Then they become your partner. That was Nelson Mandela's thought. And I also would like to highlight the family of Ronald Green finally hearing from the state of Louisiana about the unfair circumstances of his death by the police there. Blessings to them and all who are lost at this moment. And we affirm the humanity of our neighbors in Israel and Palestine, our love for the people of both nations as they struggle with the ancestral and ongoing conflicts. We begin today with the story of Ruth, with the quotation of Ruth's words to Naomi from the Book of Ruth, New Revised Standard Version of the Hebrew Bible. This is the story of Ruth and Naomi. Naomi and her husband and 2 sons were from Bethlehem and went to live in the country of Moab, which is current-day Jordan. Naomi's husband died, her 2 sons married, and they all lived in Moab for 10 years. Then her 2 sons died. Neither of her daughters-in-law had children. Naomi, in severe grief, decided to go back to Bethlehem. She suggested that Oprah and Ruth, her daughters-in-law, should stay in Moab with their own people and their own gods. While Oprah did stay in Moab, Ruth was devoted to her mother-in-law and clung to her, saying, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There I will be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." Now, we'll move from the story of foreigners to our beloved hymn, Blue Boat Home, provided to us by Susan Kiter and Renee Wilton, celebrating our global community on this beautiful blue planet.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Here we are. We've come to the place in our service where we unmute our microphones. Please unmute your microphones and greet each other, greet our neighbors, greet one another. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. See you.
Hello.
Good morning, church.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Catherine.
Hello,
Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Corliss.
Hi,
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi,
Jeffrey.
Noemi.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Brenda.
Hey, Clark.
Marcy.
Theo. Kathy. Hi. Hey, Jane. How you
Hi,
doing,
Donna.
Jane? Hi, Lila.
Hi, Beverly.
Hi, Dick Bailey.
Jay.
Good
morning. Oh, yay, Dennis.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. To all of you. I love this part.
Hi, Artie.
I love this part of First Unitarian Congregation.
MJ. Hi.
Hi. So now we'll come back together, and please again remute yourself. And we'll listen to Jeffrey Melcher, worship associate, who will be reading our wisdom story today. It's from one of my favorite UU adult religious education classes.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, this is the wisdom story from an adult program called What Moves Us, and this is a reflection by the Reverend Tendaica. There was an extraordinary range of personal beliefs among the participants in my 2003 small group workshop in Prague. They were the delegates, staff, and visitors attending the annual meeting of the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. Some were self-defined Christians, others were humanists. Some did not define themselves as religious at all. One participant, a self-identified Unitarian, believed that Jesus is not only God, but also believed that he died to save a sinful humanity, was resurrected on the third day, and is now seated on the right hand of God. Clearly, a common set of religious ideas and beliefs was not the unifying factor of this gathered community. Rather, our Unitarian, Universalist, and Unitarian Universalist doctrinal freedom was writ large. Each participant drew on different theological and/or scientific sources to explain their own personal experience of a change of heart that occurred within this small group workshop community setting of care and compassion, which we created together. Reflecting on the workshop experience, one woman said she had felt God in the room. Another said he saw a spirit moving around the room. Several persons said they had discovered something about their religion, a feeling of repose they did not know existed until that moment, and they felt trust and love of the persons around them with a new depth not known before. One man said he always hoped for a moment at these international conferences when something miraculous happens, and this workshop for him was that moment. Many persons described a heightened sense of awareness, accompanied by a deep and abiding sense of peace, relaxation, and the cessation of inner turmoil. All were amazed by the variety and diversity of ideas participants used to express the small group experiences they had created together, what it meant to them individually. The participants could freely draw on different theological and scientific resources to interpret and express the change of heart they individually experienced in this community setting of care and compassion. Because all members of a doctrinally free, liberal religious tradition. This doctrinal freedom is the intellectual signature of our liberal faith tradition. I call this zone of intellectual doctrinal freedom the third major element of personal experience for us, because it sanctions our theological diversity as members of the same religious community. As a worship associate, I also am honored to humbly give a reflection of my own, and this month's theme of stories really piqued some thoughts for me. The stories are the way we learn about meaning and value. When I was growing up, the stories from my parents were uneven. I heard plenty of stories from my mother about her life, the people she grew up with, her family, her barbershop quartet members, and my dad. She used stories to teach me life lessons about caring, ethics, dating, and birth control, often sneaking in an opinion by telling me what Irma Bombeck or Dear Abby had to say on the subject. Meanwhile, I only heard a handful of stories from my father. Though recently I extracted more stories from him in the past year than ever before. You see, I got caught back in Michigan last March when I went back for a nephew's wedding. Bam! My planned 2 weeks turned into 3.5 months. I spent more time with my parents than I had since I was in elementary school. I mean, really spend time sharing a home, talking, arguing about Fox News, and getting my dad to tell stories about his childhood in Chicago. Neurolinguistic programming, NLP, and emotional freedom techniques, EFT, teach skills that let us reframe our personal stories. We don't have to change the facts, but we can re-examine the context, learn again from our current perspective, and even create a different emotional response to the memory which is that story. When we create our stories, we create ourselves. The stories I tell about myself to myself creates my self-perception and the way I function in the world. I can recreate myself by reframing my stories. This takes conscious work and creative discipline, but it can be done. I love the phrase, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood." I can hold these stories from my father close, as if I've had them all along. We can also reshape our spiritual selves. Often I have created and recreated my spiritual self, and thus my universe itself. I mean, religious and spiritual beliefs are core systems of a person's understanding about the nature of the universe, our place in it, and the human race. I was born into a Midwestern Lutheran family, Missouri Synod, and had a magical Christian worldview in my early childhood. Then came science, Carlos Castaneda, Ram Dass, environmentalism, Gaia theology, animism, panentheism, and finally, Unitarian Universalism. Each having their own stories about reality and the world we share. It was when I found Unitarian Universalism in 1997 that I felt like I had come home. It only took me visiting twice to know my questioning mind was not only accepted, but encouraged. The story of Unitarian Universalism I like to embrace is one of continued curiosity, embracing the unknown, and how I can be challenged on the stories I hold as foundational. I am a seeker who enjoys the journey. I'm grateful to be walking alongside you all as collaborative companions on this part of my journey and swapping stories. I look forward to hearing some of them today at the Virtual Connections Fair following the service. And like Reverend Pandeyaka, I have a full appreciation of doctrinal freedom as a core tenet of our liberal religious faith.
In these times of tremendous upheaval, of violence and brutality, conflicts that can seem endless, repetitive, feeding on themselves, may we find the strength and the courage and endurance to bear it all. The challenges of the wider world and our own lives, where there is too often sorrow, loss, and grief. Where there are celebrations as well of love and community and family, of milestones to commemorate, rites of passage to commit to. Full lives lived in the joyous and the difficult. May we rely on our community. Let us reach out to one another. Let our actions be grounded in love. May our actions be grounded in love. Let our actions be grounded in love. May all who grieve be comforted. May all those who need endurance find strength. May all those in pain find ease of suffering. May all those who are lonely reach out. May they have others reach out to them. May all our actions be grounded in love. May it be so. In this month of exploring the power of story in our lives, and for the first time in my ministerial career, I am preaching on the Book of Ruth. Obviously, being named Ruth myself, I've always had a relationship with it, and I've always been happy to quip, it's the best book in the Bible. That is easy. It is also rare that I preach on scripture. When I went into seminary as a typical liberal, cultural Christian theist, I came out of seminary an atheist. I've never really liked that word because it's a negative, not theist. I identify as religious humanist now, or religious naturalist, and I am still a mystic because I have had spiritual experiences, direct experiences with a transcending mystery and wonder that are inexplicable, not able to be articulated. But it's not with a God of the Hebrew or the Christian Bible. So why now? Well, the Jewish holiday of Shavuot this year was on May 16th, last weekend. It is the second harvest festival of the Jewish calendar. Shavuot commemorates the receiving of the Jewish faith. First, by remembering Moses' receiving of the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. And second, each year during Shavuot, observant Jews read the Book of Ruth from the Hebrew Bible every year because she is the first convert to Judaism. Reading her story commemorates her receiving of the Jewish faith. So we have the Book of Ruth, which is the story of Ruth. And scripture is a tremendous vehicle for story. It's rich, violent, complicated, adventure, intrigue, telling stories of love and devotion, of conquest and empire, of oppression and standing up to oppression. I used to call it the Old Testament. That's because I was brought up Christian, where the New Testament supersedes the Old Testament, but for Jews, there is no new to supersede the Old. So for Jewish people, the Book of Ruth is contained within the Hebrew Bible. My own Jewish ancestry comes from my great-grandfather, whose family fled Budapest, Hungary in the mid-1800s from Jewish violence and oppression. The sad part is that the family completely assimilated here. At least my grandfather did. He settled in Philadelphia, and most people did not know he was Jewish. In fact, his daughter, my grandmother, married a man so anti-Semitic that he never knew his father-in-law was Jewish. My grandmother never told him. It wasn't until after our grandfather died in the mid-70s that our grandmother told the rest of the family. So sad. I visited the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. a few years ago, and the horror of that attempted genocide of the Jewish people was so hard to take in, so hard to comprehend, to integrate. It shook me to my core to imagine my grandmother married to this anti-Semitic man, taking in the news after World War II. They married in 1925. So here she was learning of the atrocities and the death camps and not being able to talk about her own heritage with her own husband, knowing that he hated that part of her. I explore my Jewish heritage, and there are many wonderful aspects of this faith tradition. One of them being how rooted it is in the solar and the lunar cycles. So the dates change for each year for the different holidays. I thought it was time to preach on the Book of Ruth in this month of exploring story as a way of being in community together. The Latin root of the word religion is religare, which means bind together. As a religious humanist and as a Unitarian Universalist, being together in community is what is important to me, not the need to believe in a supernatural God. So here we are, the story of Ruth. Who knows it? Who knows the story? Who has read the book? I'm just going to put my view on gallery mode, and I'm just going to browse through y'all. You can raise your hand or you can virtually raise your hand. Who knows this story? A few of you. Yes. Well, for those of you who don't know, it is a very small book in the Bible, 4 action-packed chapters. Even if you've never read it, you know some of the words of devotion, which you heard Sherry read earlier. Whither thou goest, I will go. Your God will be my God. What I'm not going to talk about this morning is how the story of Ruth is in the Bible because she is the great-grandmother of King David, or the intricacies of Jewish levirate marriage related to the patriarchal lineage of progeny. I'm not going to talk about how unusual the Book of Ruth is for being matrilineal in theme and nature, or how the country of Moab was born from Lot's incestuous relationship with his daughter. Nor am I going to talk about how the Hebrew word for Ruth's marriage to Naomi's son implied a rape abduction marriage, or how her actions to snag Boaz as her husband were rooted in lack of sexual agency for that time. The Hebrew word for that is sex slave. This is a very gendered story of its time. So here's the story briefly. You heard some of this earlier. Naomi and her husband and 2 sons left Bethlehem, moved to Moab, across the Great Salt Sea, which is now part of Jordan. Naomi's husband died and her 2 sons married. 10 years later, both sons died with no children. We don't know why. Naomi is devastated and decides to return to Bethlehem. She pleads with her 2 daughters-in-law to stay in Moab with their families. One daughter-in-law, Orpah, does just that, but Ruth is devoted to her mother-in-law and begs to stay with her. We don't know a lot about the 10 years they have spent in Moab, but we see this beauty of devotion that Ruth has for Naomi. Ruth loves Naomi so much she is willing to go to an unknown land in which she will be a foreigner, to a land where Moabites are cursed and denigrated. They go together back to Bethlehem. They arrive at the beginning of the barley harvest. Ruth offers to go out and glean barley to provide food for their small family. Ruth is noticed by Boaz, the owner of the barley fields. He goes to meet her and he provides protection for her. He tells the other workers not to bother her, not to sexually harass her. And she is grateful for this. He has no obligation to protect her, a foreigner, which she feels strongly. She knows she's an outsider. She is vulnerable because she doesn't belong. Boaz goes so far as to tell his own workers to leave some of the barley on the ground so that Ruth's gleaning is more productive. The 3rd chapter of Ruth is often portrayed as sexy. Who knows, it might have been. Ruth goes to Boaz in the night after the partying on the threshing floor. Boaz had already taken on the role of protector and provider for Ruth in his position of power as landowner. He was a relative of Naomi's and therefore related to Ruth's dead husband. Presumably, they consummate their future relationship on the threshing floor, and then Ruth sneaks out before morning after Boaz has pronounced her as a worthy woman. The last chapter is the maneuverings of Boaz claiming his right to marry Ruth, and they lived happily ever after, providing King David with his grandfather Obed. That is the story. The author, Isaac Denison, says, all sorrows can be born if you put them into a story. And there is much sorrow in this story. Naomi certainly comes back to Bethlehem a broken woman, having lost her husband and both sons. We don't know about Ruth's sorrow, even whether she loved her husband. We might presume that she sorely felt the lack of having borne him a child, since that was the true job of a married woman in those times and that place. What we do know, what has come down through the ages, through this short book, is that she dearly loved her mother-in-law. Beyond all expectations, she left her homeland of Moab and traveled back with Naomi to Bethlehem. What a choice to travel to a land she'd never seen, giving up all the comforts of familiarity and community and family of origin. We don't know historically what is actually true, but the deep love and devotion that Naomi has for Ruth has come across thousands of years with these beautiful words that often end up in weddings, in songs. What is important to us here today in this room, in this story of Ruth and Naomi? Our theological heritage is Christian heresies. Unitarians believing in one God, but not the God in three, the Trinity, were Unitarians rather than Trinitarians. And universal salvation. Universalists believe that if there is a heaven, everyone gets into heaven. We don't believe in a God that would send some people to heaven and some people to hell. Now, clearly we have come a long ways from those particular Christian heresies. Here in this room together today, we probably have atheists, agnostics, humanists, Buddhists. We might have Sikhs, Jews, Muslims, liberal Christians, pagans. The Reverend Tandayaka in the wisdom story that Jeffrey chose even lifted up a Unitarian who was close to a Trinitarian. Unusual, yes, but our faith is broad. Our Unitarian Universalist faith doesn't require a creed to belong, to walk together in religious community. We are held together by covenant, a loving aspiration covenant, not creed. We are held together by our agreements about how we are going to be together in community as we are building that more beautiful, multicultural world we all know is possible. I don't know your congregation well. I'm delighted to be here. And I did spend a lovely time recently, first Sunday of this month, with your anti-racism caucusing. Your pastor, the Reverend Teresa, is a minister to ministers. They are deeply moving and they have ministered to me more than once. What I do know about congregations I've been close to is that there is sometimes tension, dare I say resentment, between atheists and humanists and some of the more spiritual folk who use religious language who believe in God. Now, we do not know a lot about Ruth's life. Was she deeply religious in her Moabite faith, which involved household gods placed on altars needing to be worshiped? Did Ruth mind leaving those gods behind and taking on the faith of her mother-in-law? We don't know. We don't know, but it is possible that Ruth loved Naomi so much that even though she didn't believe in the Jewish faith, she was willing to take on that faith because her relationship with Naomi was more important than differing religious beliefs. What I would love to see in our Unitarian Universalist congregations is for us to soften so it doesn't matter so much what other people believe. To soften so that we aren't triggered by religious language from other people. Now, for those of you who have become Unitarian Universalist because you suffered religious trauma, religious abuse in your childhood, I am sorry you went through that. You didn't deserve it. I feel very lucky. I'm grateful my parents became Unitarian Universalists, and I've always been so grateful I didn't have that angry, judgmental God in the back of my head to banish, because that can be hard to do. So if that's your situation, then your work is spiritual healing for yourself, your body and your spirit, so that you are no longer triggered by religious words and rituals that don't harm others. And you might have already done a lot of that work here in this congregation in Oakland. It would not surprise me. I think the story of Ruth in the Hebrew Bible gives us a story of relationship that is more important than individual religious belief. May we all choose to love each other, accept differences, and walk together in religious community. May we all rise up to congregational commitments, aspirations to love each other, accept differences, and walk together in religious community. To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community. May it be so. Shalom. Namaste. Blessed be.
So now we're at the moment in our service that we call the invitation to generosity. I have been a member of this church since the turn of the century. This church has given me many gifts, most notably a set of friends that I love deeply. It's been a place where my values have become focused and put into action. The church is our interwoven community. Visitors and longtime members, young and old, from all walks of life, with a commitment to make a better world, starting right here, right now. This act of generosity signifies a relationship with this church, this community, in that by giving, you help ensure that we continue to have a place to explore who we are and our place in the universe. Your financial gift, no matter the size, strengthens this community and helps sustain the church. Please give what you can. Right here on the screen, we offer ways which you can give. Now, will you please rise in spirit and say with me our congregational commitment? Words are again right there on the screen. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community, we dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings. Thank you.
This closing song we will enjoy are Ruth's words to Naomi, set to music by Jewish singer and songwriter Shoshana Jedwab. This particular arrangement is by the Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout, who is Director of Worship and Music at First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. In the Book of Ruth in the Hebrew Bible, a family is created in love. The power of this connection begins as Ruth says to Naomi, "Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your God, my God." This song has become deeply important to many different faith communities, including the Unitarian Universalist annual gathering of religious professionals of color, Finding Our Way Home. Let these words wash over you and sing along as you are called to.
You're divine, my divine. 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 My divine, you're divine, my divine, you're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go with me. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. I ask my sister, people, my people, your divine, my divine. My people, you're divine, my divine. divine. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. My divine, your people are my people. Where you go, I will go. Children, where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go. Children, where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. My people. You're divine, my people. Where you go, I will go, sister. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, ancestor. Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. You're divine, my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you are, my children. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go. My divine, your children, my people. Where you go, my people. Where you go, my people. Your people are my people. Your divine, my people. Your people are my people. Your people are my people.
Oh, beloveds, what an hour this is. This hour when we're together in this unique way. I'm from the Rocky Mountains here, and I'm with you. I feel it. I know it. So, blessings upon you. On everything you need this day. On how you know your service is called for in this world, on what it is that you particularly have to offer as gifts, the gifts of everyone involved in this service today. My goodness, thank you, every one of you. So good to see Sherry again and meet Jeffrey and Claudia and Vincent. And there might be one more that I'm not remembering. Thank you all. Stefan, who's now extinguishing the flames. Blessings upon you all. Take the love that you have found in this hour, an hour like no other, because you were here for it. Thank you for being here. Go restored and shored up with love. Take it out into the week with you so that you can do that work out there that is not easy, and then come back next week for this beautiful community.